Hello, once more, welcome back to Leopard Street, welcome back to the cellar. And again, we are back in the cellar now following the N-gauge excursions with a couple of trains running. First thing, the emergency, well, I'm going to wait for the train to come back around again to do that bit. What we look at today is lighting. Now, signal box has lights. The bridge next to it will have a light that's on order. There's going to be a street light about here somewhere, possibly here, I've not decided which yet. There's going to be a yard light about here. They've not turned up. I was hoping they would have done. I would have done those. So instead, what we're going to look at is the high street. Specifically this building here. I've fitted some lights to it. It's not plugged in yet over here because I need to modify the layout slightly. Got some wires. Ooh, wires. In a minute, we're going to go over to the desk. I'm going to have a look at how that went. Edited highlights because it was unbelievably frustrating. Meantime, I've had some feedback on the emergency stop video I did. Various suggestions about, instead of cut the power, send out an emergency stop command over the DCC, because otherwise trains with a stay alive will keep going. However, I can do this. Trains have stopped. Now my first thought was, yeah, I could do that. I can modify the software. Oh, I put some software on it. It's not talking to the microcontrollers yet, but it will be. It says, right, well, when one of those buttons is pressed, instead of cutting the power immediately, have a relay signal that will cut power. Send a signal, and this is next to my DCCX controller, so I can just talk to it. I'm not even over the Wi-Fi. I can just talk to it directly and say, right, send out the emergency stop command. Fairly straightforward. That'll stop trains. And what that means is anything that's got stay alive fitted, which these don't have yet, but some will have eventually, will stop. And then, excuse me, half a second or so later, cut power. Yeah, that would work. That would work quite nicely. It does everything I'm doing now, with one exception. And it also will stop trains with stay alives. Problem is, then the trains are stopped. Now if I press the button back, everything picks up where it left off. So what I can do is I can press the emergency stop, I can go to the layout controller and I can manually stop a train if I need to. Then I can turn the power on and everything else will pick up. I still need to tell my automation system, by the way, don't panic because you've lost all of the block occupancy stuff. Instead what you need to do is, when that happens, is listen for the emergency stop has been pressed and reacts to that, which it doesn't do yet. I do like this J26. And the Bachmann breakdown, which as somebody pointed out is a bit of a rip-off. It's not cheap, I'll grant you. It's quite nice. But, anyway, enough wibble. Let's get to the desk. Let's have a look about how to fit some lighting. I'm not in this video going to go through the computer code that drives it. We're just going to plug it in and we're going to see that it works. And we have a bit of a disco. Because this has got red, green, blue and white LEDs in it. Let's go to the desk and have a little look. Just going to wait for G5 to come round again. Lovely little loco. I've got some work planned on these coaches as well. That's for the future. To the desk. With a building with wires. Okay, so here we have the building. I've taken the back off it. Back hasn't been painted yet. I've made some cuts in the back here for bits of wire. So what are we going to do with lights is I want a light in here, a light in here. These will light the shop bit, but they need to be fairly far forward because I don't want them, if you look at it from this side, what I don't want is the lights behind the little displays. I want them in front. So basically as far into the front corners here as I can get them. One up here and one up here. And I'm going to use these things, which are SK68112s. Now, I'm going to go over how these work in another video, as I've mentioned. However, what it is, it's a daisy chain. So I've got 4 of these. They go in a row. 3 wires come in one side, power in the ground, bridge all the way across to the last one, and then don't go any further. The data comes in one side, goes to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and then comes out. So the building will have 4 wires. They're going to come in through this hole I've made in the bottom. They're going to go to the first light, which has got, just get rid of some of the bits of dusty cardboard in there. I'm going to have to touch up the paintwork once this is finished. Incidentally, I've not painted the inside black. I don't think light bleed is going to be a huge problem because it's twin layered card, so it should be all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to solder some of these down. Now I need my trusty bits of blue tack. So what I need to do is put a bit of blob of blue tack down, like that. It's going to hold one of these. Now this is going to be this first light in here. So if I plod that way, so the wires are going to come in this side and they're going to go out the other side. So the first thing I need to do is tin all the wires on contact pads on that, because if I don't, experience has shown I'm not soldering to it, or not easily at any rate. So do that like that. And I've had a go redressing my soldering iron tip, so I'm hoping it will behave slightly better than it usually does. Get some solder to melt on that. Onto that first pad, will that melt on there properly? Yeah, come on. Melt. See, that seems to be that one. That one. That one. Let's do this one again because I don't think that went on properly. So. And the idea here is this wets these pads with a bit of solder, so that when I put a bit of wire that's also been wetted with a bit of solder onto it, it should melt and stick together quite nicely. Right, so the next thing I need to do is cut, prepare and tin my 3 wires. Now I've got 3 lengths. This is 22 AWG silicon wire. I'm going to use green for data in, and then I've got red for 5 volts and black for power, black for ground, which is the sort of the usual colour scheme I go with. So what with that, I'm going to use yellow for data out when I get as far as the other end, but that's a little way off yet. I've got to solder several of these first, so that can go there, that can go, and this is just so I can tin these. So I just need to twizzle the wires slightly. Now I'm using this silicon stuff. Normally I would use single core wire for this, or certainly for the internal wires, and then maybe something like 702 for the external wire. And I tried that, and the big problem is the insulation on the wire I have melts far too easily, which is slightly annoying. But what it means is the wire ends up sort of short-circuiting to the adjacent wire because the insulation is gone when the wires are too close together. And that was just slightly annoying, so I thought I'm not doing that. Hence I'm back here with this now, using this silicon wire, which has the advantage, well, 2 advantages. Firstly, it is incredibly flexible, which is very good. That's that one. Try this one, but it's also a lot more heat resistant. Which has the distinct advantage that it doesn't melt as soon as a soldering iron looks at it. Right, so what I need to do now, take those off there. Move this over here. And once again, my thanks. It was a channel subscriber who mentioned using blue tack. And me, in my harebrainedness, didn't realise what they meant until I went back and looked at it and thought, they mean to hold the wires. They don't mean to hold things in place on the model, which is what I first thought. They mean to hold the wires while I'm doing this. And to be perfectly honest, you're a genius, because yeah, it's one of those flashes of the blindingly obvious. A little bit more wet the tip of the soldering iron slightly, and then that should be able to go into there like that. And that should be connected. And it is. And I know this is working better because I tried this before I redressed the soldering iron tip, and all I was getting was blobs. The wires were not connecting. I was getting dry joint after dry joint after dry joint, and I could not get the solder to go anywhere near where I want. I still suspect I need a new soldering iron. I have tried changing the tip on a number of occasions, and whether it's just the nature of this soldering iron, they all end up loose. And because they all end up loose, they won't connect properly. Just need to get that a little bit wet on the end of there, because basically if the soldering iron isn't wet with solder, it won't connect. There we go. You need the wet solder. It sort of helps it conduct the heat. That's that one. We'll check these are all soldered properly in a sec. They should be. And then I've got to work out how to do the wires coming this way, which is basically going to have to come out this side, which is slightly annoying. What I would actually quite liked is to get hold of these lights, not on these little pre-made boards. I would probably have custom made some. I could probably get some and do them a little bit differently, because what would be quite nice. Put some more on there. This is just chasing itself around on the tip currently, because it doesn't want to stay to the tip. Here we are. That looks like that's gone. It hasn't. I can see from here that's a dry joint. A little more on there, and onto there. There we are, that should be it. So, with a bit of luck, I can now lift that off there. All three of those wires are connected. Yes, I've got blue tack all over the screen of the LED that's stuck to it, but that I can clean off. That's the first wire. Now that, as I said, is going to go into there. These wires are going to get bent down. Yeah, so here's editing me again. Frankly, you don't need to spend the next 30 minutes watching me soldering the other 4 of these things together. Yeah, this one was a little bit awkward, partly because the soldering iron's playing up. I know they say a poor workman blames his tools. Well, I am very definitely a poor workman, and I have shoddy tools. So, yeah. To get this one in the corners, you can see the wire in the centre, the little ground wire came out through the middle. Did make some of the wiring lens a bit awkward later, but it works, so I'm not too bothered. So again, yeah, turn the other one up. This one goes on. This is going to give me 2 lights on the ground floor. There isn't space to put one behind the door. This building's quite low relief, but that's not really a problem. I just need to paint a little bit on the backing for this. So these are going to go in. They're going to say they'll be in front of those displays. There's going to be some more painting. There's lots of hot glue and stuff to go into this, which is why I didn't bother finishing painting the interiors. I just did the side bits, just because I know there's going to be quite a bit to stick on here. I've got lots of a lot of this wire is going to need painting. Silicon wire, very flexible, doesn't take paint brilliantly. It's all right as long as you're not disturbing it, and inside this building it'll be fine. So that's going to go in. And yeah, so we're just repeating the process. Here we are, tinning the next 3 joining wires, which takes, as usual, just takes a little bit of time. The problem is this soldering tip is in really, really bad condition. And like I say, it's loose on the end of it, so it's tight when it's cold. What it needs is tightening up when it's hot. The problem is when it's hot, you can't hold it to tighten it up. So, yeah. Anyway, we got there in the end with this. It's a little bit awkward, but yeah, we're getting there. I've got a few more buildings to do with this. I will find a slightly quicker way of doing it. This is the sort of activity that should be, I've got an hour or 2 free tonight. I know, I'll go and do another building. This shouldn't be a huge logistics exercise. But there we go. Now, as we'll see when I come to talk about the system, about how this works, the reason for using these lights is I want to be able to control the brightness. Now, yes, you can do that using resistors. Yes, you can do that using pulse width modulation. It's quite easy to do it with a digital signal, which means I can change it whenever I want to. So yeah, that was why I came up to these things. And if you saw my Engage video with the station, with I think it's 13 or 14 wires coming out of the bottom of it, yeah, this building's only going to need 4 wires. Well, yeah, 4 wires, however you do it. I could put the bottom 2, the shop lights in series. I've got bigger buildings that need many more wires and many more lights. I didn't really want to be having to string all of that across. So this way, this can basically be just 4 wires going to a little lighting block. Well, 3 wires, because the daisy chaining wire never leaves the block. And then away we go. I can do this. I can do the 2 other buildings next to it. I'll be doing the little kiosk kit I bought, which I've not put together yet. Anyway, here we are, virtually finished on this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shut up. We're going to move on to the next bit, which is this setup. It now needs to be tested. So let's go and see if this works. Yeah, back to the, well, I'll say what passes for action, but you know what I mean. Catch you in a sec. Right, back. What I've done, I've cheated slightly. I've crimped some pins just loosely onto the end of the connectors. So this goes into an Arduino board, which unfortunately I can't keep in camera shot when I plug it in. But it's basically here, it's literally power, ground, and a single data connection into pin 4. So I'm going to bring this back over here because the USB lead's too short to keep this on camera. Anyway, if I plug this in, what I'm going to do first off is turn this desk light off, because this will make life a bit easier to see. Plugs in. And you can see the lights now, hopefully. I'll do that. And sort of put a bit of shade down here. You can see them, they're coming on and off, and they're going on and off in sequence. I'm quite pleased with that, because that means the soldering works. So what I've now got to do is fit those into the building. So I unplug that, remove these from here, and I've got to think about what I need to do now. Right, what I need to do, before I do anything else, is thread all 4 of these wires and take the blue tack off here, because obviously I'm not going to blue tack them into the building. That is going to need some actual glue. Remove all the little bits of threading off here. So that like that, that like that, that like that. And then to think about the glue I'm going to use. I think I am going to try Bostik. The reason I'm going to try Bostik is because I'm not entirely sure where my hot glue gun's gone. So I'm going to give some Bostik a try. But before I can do any of that, this one, I'm not crimping anything onto the end of the output wire yet. I'll just move that out of the way again. I've turned the light back on. See what we're doing. So that has got to go through there. Right, is that hole going to be big enough to take 4 of these wires? Probably not, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So just excuse me for a moment while I do this. Slice there, and then yeah, this is something I'm going to learn from for the other buildings, is make the hole in the base bigger. Right, so that's a bit of a mess, but yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Okay, so first off is yellow. Before I do this, actually I've got some more to do. I need to cut this side here, because this has got to take the wires from the upper floor to the middle floor. And don't worry, I know what that looks like. I'm not pressing that blade anywhere near my fingers. True to form, it's just decided instead of cutting everything to rip the card, however. I need to go in and cut that. There will be a slight amount of light bleed between the floors because of all these holes and wires. Yeah, I'll live with it. Alright, so that goes through that hole there, which is big on the bottom but quite a mess on the top, and that is then going to go. You see that light has got to go into there. So I think they're actually going to end up being glued by the wires. Right, I'm going to get some boss stick so I can stick that one in. And we'll see how we go. I've got, boss stick is wonderful stuff. I've got several tubes of it. I buy it on eBay, Amazon, eBay, same sort of things. Not affiliated with either of them. But I buy it sort of a bit in bulk. Like, I buy a box of it at a time. I'm going to take my soldering iron off because I shouldn't need that anymore. Right, so that is going to go up and around here. Now I very deliberately haven't painted the building roofs. This is probably because once I've stuck all these in, I'm going to need to play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to hold that there. The problem is this stuff's, I don't know if boss stick's actually going to stick this stuff, so we shall find out. And the answer is no, not in the slightest is boss stick going to stick that. Right, I'm going to have to find the glue gun. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, found the glue gun. Well, that finishes warming up. Just let the glue on there. Drizzle out itself a little bit. So yeah, this one's going to go up here, somewhere in the centre. Sort of peg it in there a bit. I'll put a blob of hot glue in. I'll press this in, and then I'll probably put some more over the wires once it's all sorted out. That's then going to come down and stick in the middle, and I'm going to come down and do the lower two and sort that out. Before I do that, while that gun warms up, I'm going to thread all of these 3 pins through the hole in the floor, one at a time. Hope they all come through. They don't come through much, I just want them sort of... Basically, I don't want to be messing around trying to do this one. I've got glue warm and waiting. A lot of that one might come through as well. Should do. There we go. There we are. So that gives me the lower floor. See, there's plenty of slack on those wires as well, which is good. That's going to go in there. That's going to go there. Right. Is this glue gun ready to use yet? Yeah, it's getting there. Right. So that is going to be a dollop of hot glue there. Right. Get the light for it quickly. And yes, again, you don't need to see me glue all of these things in real time. It's basically just hot gluing the wire. Yeah, hot glue will stick this silicone wire. You also then lather the stuff over the top, and it will stay where you put it. It's flexible, but it's also very springy. Yeah, basically, whatever you're doing, pick a suitable wire. I mean, to be honest, you could probably use thin enamelled wire for this sort of stuff. The current these things take is not massive, but here we go. So this has got most of the wires in. We shall cut back and have a little look at testing this. See why they call it hot glue now? It's glue and it's quite hot. Yeah. This silicone wire, though, I think this stuff is probably about the only thing I've got that'll glue it. So yeah. Yeah, another little blob here. Don't need much, but needs a little bit. Just hold the yellow wire. Cool, and you should stick it in. Then all of these wires are going to come up through this little hole here. They're probably not going to be glued actually like that, because there's no really anything to glue them to. So what I've then got is these wires down here at the exit. This bit does need gluing, because this is where there's going to be some like load. If there's any load at all on the wires, it's going to be where they come in and out of the building. So that is where they are going to get thoroughly glued. Paste that over there a little bit, or spider threads, and then around the entrance bit is just going to get absolutely lathered with glue. Right, turn that off. That, my friends, should be a building with lighting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the back on, and this is a friction fit. I won't say through to clever design, it is just a friction fit. But that fits on there like that. And I can see the wires through it, but it's not too bad. So what I'm now going to do is turn this off again. I'm going to bring the Arduino back round. I'm going to plug this in. And for the first time ever, it's like really first time ever, if I can get all the spider web off the bottom of the thing and what have you. I'm going to put that somewhere where it's not going to stick. That goes to pin 4, which is that one. Power and ground go to the power and ground lines, which are that one and that one. And I'm going to plug this in, and hopefully it's still going to light up. Assuming I can get the USB lead to reach, that is. To move this over a little. Yes, right, put that into there. And I hope you can see a building with what's tantamount to disco lights going off, lighting the floors up. So that was a palaver, but anyway, and it's also made a hell of a mess. But there we go. Now that is the first building for my high street done. Now I've still got a bit more paint to do. I've got to paint the rear walls of that. The back of the door needs painting red, but you can see the effect I'm going for here, and hopefully you can see that it's actually quite good. If I can just the problem I've got down here is it's very hard to shade anything from the main lights. I can't actually control the main lights. How do you try and get this? See if I can sort of cover it a little bit without. I'm trying to cover it without blocking the camera, if that makes sense. I hope. Yeah. Anyway, never mind. You can see that working, sort of. You can see the effect though. So, yes, on the layout, these are normally going to be set up as warm white lights. But they also can do disco light mode. So, yes. Right. Yes, join me next time for more frustration. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to wrap this one up. These little lights flickering away quite happily. For the next episode, I will have the painting done on this, and we're going to look at how to control these. I need to make... I've got this covered in hot glue now. I can peel that off. Yeah, never mind. I've got another one. I need to use a bit of this to make a plug and socket board, which is going to handle, I think, 4 of these buildings. So it'll be like connection in one side, building 1, building 2, building 3, building 4. There's little holes in this thing for mounting as well, which is quite nice. They will daisy chain, and all I'm going to do is say, right, the data in pin on one. So the data out pin on one goes to the data in pin on the next, and we've got power and ground running all the way down. Job done. I'm going to have to modify one of my board controllers to drive this, but for now I can just use the little test code to at least prove it works. I'm then going to have to finish this building off, so I've got to... I say there's more paint that this needs doing. There's little, lots of little touch-up pieces which I'll have to go upstairs and have done. I really quite like that. and then I'll be able to start installing it, and also doing the same on some of the other buildings. So I will be back in the next one. Thank you very much for watching. If you've stuck with this long, you deserve some sort of medal, because this one was a bit of a muddle due to things not working properly, but there we go. Next time round, we'll have a look at adding a bit of paint to it. There's a bit coming loose. Stick that back on. Yeah, a lot wobbly bit. I need to see if that actually comes off, and if it does, re-stick it. Or more probably lather some super glue underneath it, which is probably the way to do it. Yes, so I'll be back in the next one with how the programming on this works and how you can do various little effects with it. One thing, excuse me, horse in the throat. One thing that's quite useful with this sort of lighting is day and night mode for a layout. So during the daytime, you want the lights on quite bright so you can see the lights are on, or possibly even turned off. And at night, you might want them on a bit dimmer so that they're not blinding. We'll have a look at how to do that. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Likes, comments, shares, subscribes, etc. welcome. Meanwhile, I'll leave you to the rest of your week. Thank you very much, and goodbye.